Hi, everyone. I am Jessica Mcilveen. I am a parent empowerment coach and the founder of Kids Yoga Therapy. And I'm glad you're joining me today because I'm interviewing and speaking with an amazing man, Jeffrey Slayter. Now, Jeffrey Slayter has worked with over 1 million people from 13 countries all over the world. He has shared the stage with top names such as Tony Robbins, Tim Ferris, and Richard Branson. I don't think you can get any bigger than those names. And he's done this for over 15 years. He's a best-selling author, and he really helps people to communicate effective leadership and embody what that means, and really believes that communication is directly proportional to the success that you will have in life, which is a really powerful message and one that takes a wonderful amount of work over the years. But Jeff, thanks so much for joining me today.
You're welcome, Jessica, and thanks for having me on. I remember meeting you at a training of mine. We were talking about speaking and facilitation.
Yeah.
And I found out more about what you did, and this is actually why I'm here today, is because of your stand for children. And it's a little bit different topic than I usually talk about. Yeah. But I remember many years ago, I was one of those kids in special ed in high school. And as I got more success in my life, they asked me to come speak to the kids, to the high school, because of the level of success I had reached. And they said, come speak. And I said, I only want to speak to special ed kids. Yeah. And so I went and spoke to the special ed kids about how really anything's possible. And sometimes their so-called weaknesses are the biggest strengths. So I'm really here to support the parents and the kids in reframing and reestablishing a relationship with what they think are weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, that's the perfect lead in, and that's exactly the framework, and that's exactly the messages that I create and inform the parents of as well that I work with. So I'd love to just give some context and really start from, your experiences within school. So why was it so difficult for you? I mean, what was there for you that you needed to deal with?
So I'm a little bit emotional about this in a good way, where it's just like, look, the school system currently right now is broken, and it needs a major upgrade. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for people like you who have programs that support people in healing the trauma that can actually happen from broken school systems and moving through that. So the school system is made for the industrial age, as you know, and I can just look at many of the people listening to this already comprehend that. So I'm just going to dive into the impact of a school system that didn't actually teach from experience. It was unbelievable. Yeah. Like looking back now, I couldn't believe that they didn't see the kids for who they were. I mean, and just to give you a context, I grew up my mother's a Montessori teacher. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my first school I went to was a beautiful school. It was in Hawaii, and it was a private school. It was beautiful, and we used to go to school with bare feet, and it was actually the name of the school in Hawaiian was called Happy Learning, and so we would all learn through experience. We would learn through having our bare feet. We'd like grow taro. We would build little boats and wooden boats, and the classes weren't gauged on how well you did on grades. There were no grades. There was just literally, they would identify where our strengths were and what are those strengths. Yeah. If I was really good at taking care of the animals, so that was my job, take care of the animals. Yeah. And I like wood shop, and that was what we did. I did more wood shop. So the school, and it was about play and and nourishing those gifts. And then I switched, and then I moved from Hawaii to Silicon Valley, and I ended up in a public school. But it's not to say about public or private. But this public school was just about teaching from the front room and no experience in grades. So the impact that system had on me was I never felt smart. I didn't feel good enough. I felt like I was always behind. I felt like I wasn't, like my skills didn't matter. I started to lose the skills. I started to lose the traits that really were my biggest gifts as well. And I felt like I was stupid. And then there were some teachers who understood how to nurture gifts, like I know you do, like how to pay attention to the gifts and nurture them. Whereas some teachers didn't understand that comprehension, and so they would actually be quite I guess you could say, disempowering. And then what began to happen was I began to act out. And when I say act out, I mean just I would just leave school. I'd go surfing, and then I would and then what would happen would be, but and then I would go to parties, but I didn't actually drink. I didn't do any drugs or any of that stuff. But like I kind of was hanging out with the cool kids or whatever they were, and then the school became a joke, and then I quickly learned that I started to identify with that I wasn't a good enough kid, and I didn't have anything to offer. But luckily at home, my mother, being a teacher, she would pay attention to my strengths and nurture more my strengths. So I had this balance of this happening, and I'm very grateful for it. So what I want to say is that just because your kid is not doing well in school doesn't mean that he or she doesn't have something amazing to bring to this world.
Yeah.
And I know you might have heard that before, but literally, the school system will potentially be having your kid feel disempowered, not good enough, isolated, and feeling quite lonely, and like they're not going to be successful in life.
Yeah.
And I guess what I want to share to the parents is your home should be a sanctuary from that experience. And what I mean by sanctuary is a place where whatever your kids' gifts are, is nurture them, water them. And it's like there's a picture of Einstein, and Einstein, there's a fish in front of a tree, and people think that because the fish can't climb a tree, that there's something wrong with it. And well, that's the school system. Yeah. And you have many fish in the school system, and many birds that can't climb trees, but they can fly. So you've got kids out there that are birds and fish, and horses. But then you expect the school system expect them to be able to climb that tree, when in fact, so then really what really needs to upgrade is the person demanding them to climb the tree, or the system demanding to climb the tree. And the school system itself does not prepare the children for the future at all. The biggest attributes I've learned in my life that's been the biggest things of success has been actually the ability to change. Yeah. The ability to not so much pay attention to my weaknesses, but grow my strengths. The ability to communicate, the ability to make friends, the ability to think paradoxically. What does that mean? I mean that there's not necessarily everything's right or wrong. But the good thing that came out of failing school, like at times having failures in classes and things like that, or papers, was that I learned that I can survive, and I can survive hardship. I can survive hard times. So that's one thing your kid's getting out of it if they're in a challenging system, is that they're learning resilience.
Sure. Yeah. If they have that sanctuary at home, right?
If there's no sanctuary, they're screwed.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important. Like, people work with people like you. I know that you take parents through a process to have them become a sanctuary within themselves. I've coached over. I used to have coaches that I used to coach coaches on how to actually coach people in transformation. I've had over 1,000 coaches go through my programs. Yeah. So I'm the coach's coach. And what I actually discovered, and I would have parents come to me, especially in Asia specifically, and say, can you work with my children? They need to get better grades, and they need to be happier. And I would always tell them, the best work you could do for your children is the work you do on yourself, because it's a little bit like that movie, The Dog Whisperer. Not that movie, but The Dog Whisperer. It's like the owners were always the challenge. Yeah,
that's right.
Well, it's a bit like that. When I was diagnosed with ADD, and whatever that is, high definition HD ADD, like great. But you know what I discovered is I actually challenged that whole thing. Like, they should go do the research on actually what the guy that diagnosed that, what actually happened to him, what he said before he died. Let them do the research. They can make their own conclusion. So I don't buy into it, for me at least. Yeah. So go ahead.
And what about, because there's another layer on top of that too. So you also have dyslexia, which, is a lot of the time, Richard Branson does, a lot of amazing people do.
Tom Cruise, Richard Branson, the list goes on and on. I give you, there's 50 people. I'd have to go look up the list of so-called have dyslexia, and they're the ones that are in leadership positions.
Absolutely. And yet, so I'm interested to know the transition from Hawaii to a mainstream school then, when you have dyslexia, was that a really difficult, I guess it's a different issue, right? Dyslexia, that's where a lot of the failure comes from, the feeling of that, not getting a good enough grades, not keeping up with your classmates. I mean, how was that for you in that?
It was very challenging, but I'll say the real issue is not dyslexia or ADD. The real issue is the confidence of the children.
Yeah.
So if they have parents, my mom and dad were incredible, and they still are. And they were extremely empowering for me.
Can you share how, for parents that maybe feel like they're not being super empowering, or they would like to be more empowering for their children when they've got learning difficulties, how were they empowering you?
My mom never saw me as having a learning disability. My father didn't either.
Yeah.
Just to give you a sense, my father was a struggling entrepreneur, and has done very well for himself. And my mother was a teacher, and she didn't work. So she was a stay-at-home mom. So that's the context. But because I have such incredible loving parents who were, I literally, that was the best thing I could possibly have. And how they were loving and how they demonstrated their love was by encouraging me to go after what I love.
Yeah.
I remember when I was 20, they said, I was like, I want to learn about these trainings. I want to learn about public speaking. And then they actually supported me in funding my first training in that area. And then my father would encourage me to go surfing on the weekends. So go surfing. And my mother would stand up for me against the school system at times. She would walk in pissed off and with a commitment to her son.
Yes.
And I was like, whoa, you're awesome, Mom.
Yeah.
And then I felt loved and appreciated and respected. I felt protected.
Yeah.
That's and then in that protection of my mother's love, my father's stand for me and my commitment and their commitment, I was able to find my own voice, my own heart. And then those so-called disabilities became my biggest strengths. So this is the thing about ADD and dyslexia, whatever this is. Oftentimes children don't know how to I know for myself, I didn't feel good enough. I didn't, in the school system, I didn't feel smart. And what we do as human beings is the children process our information internally in our bodies. And you'll see a kid in school, and I used to do this, where they're looking down. They're kind of looking down, and they look like they're not paying attention. But what's actually happening is they're in a kinesthesia. And they're actually right here in their kinesthesia. They're literally in their emotions, and there's too much emotions to process. So their attention's all in their emotions. And then they can't hear the words that are being said because they're busy processing it. And this is all the trauma that's unresolved.
Yeah. And
so as they sit in that kinesthetic experience of unresolved trauma, which is caused from a school system that needs an upgrade, environments that are not healthy at home, caused from parents that might be fighting or arguing, caused from really crappy food.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they can't process, and they stay there. And then the teachers get upset because they're not paying attention, and then they get labeled as having ADD. Second thing that's a misconception that I found is that children that have the ability to assimilate a larger amount of information often go perceptual. They often go perceptual. They also go disassociated. That means they actually are disassociated, which means now they would call that in the school system a lack of focus. But if you ever watch someone who's really good at what they do and really in the zone and focus being focused, tapped in to the flow of life, they're actually generally a little bit peripheral. They're paying attention to everything. Now to the outside, they look like they're not paying attention. But actually what they're doing is they're gathering far amounts of information that are coming through that are beyond the mind. And the children in school are taught to do this, to focus. But what that does is it stifles creativity. And this is the misconception. And so you have kids in there that are artistic and have the ability to open, but they can't actually open because the school system says focus, 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 when in fact to be peripheral, is the biggest gift. So the school system basically is the problem.
Yeah.
Our kids are incredible. And the second biggest problem is the food. And when my mother was a Montessori teacher and everything else, she paid attention specifically to my food intake. And she started to have me drink clean water, have me have organic food, fresh food, morning smoothies, and all the so-called anxiety, all that stuff stopped. It was my diet. It was my environment, my diet. So if you want to shift your kids, shift their diet, stop pumping a bunch of toxic crap into them, and then stand for them, and then get them in environments that actually are conducive to their true nature, which is to be amongst nature, to drink clean water, to have clean food, to have sunlight. Anyways, I'm going on and on, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I need to get the pom-poms out, Jeff.
That's right. I really am sick of kids being misdiagnosed. I'm sick of kids walking out of school because they walk away with a gift and then they walk with that gift shunned.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then our world, we all suffer for it. Enough is enough.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I totally agree with you. And I guess I'd like to know, so you came away from the schooling system feeling not really empowered, right, by your learning opportunities and what happened in there.
That's a really nice way to say it. I came away with the school system with a big fuck you to the school system because it's fucked. And also what I came away with the school system was, holy crap, like this is broken. Yeah. And I'm gonna go teach something that actually makes a difference in people's lives, that prepares them for what's actually ahead, which is the ability to communicate, ability to love ourselves, and the ability to handle challenging times and not be a regurgitator of information, and be somebody that actually knows how to think on their feet quickly and honor all perspectives and develop self-awareness and empathy. And that's what I was going to teach this world. So that's essentially what I came away with. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a huge mission. And when you were re-entering the school, you said that you were talking to students, just the special ed kids. That's all you wanted to do. So would you get a chance to actually talk to them and find out what was going on for them? I mean, what were the common themes, or what were you able to get out of them or help them see? You know, what was in that experience for you?
I saw so many gifted children with so much to share. And I saw a system that was leading them to believe and programming me to believe that they were broken. Yeah. And I saw some of them, unfortunately, buying into that belief. Absolutely. And so my job was to support them in remembering who they were beyond the programming and the cultural programming. And so what I saw was kids dying at age, 15, but being buried at age 80. That's what I saw. And I saw a system I saw a shovel, and that was a system. I think we have work to do. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And I guess the first step for parents watching, right, is to actually keep working on themselves. Like you said before, working on themselves will then work with their children and on their children, and ensuring that they feel empowered in this world.
And and identify the teachers that have your children's back. Because I will tell you right now, the best things my parents did was made my home as much of a sanctuary as possible. Yeah. Communicated with me openly. When there were challenges, they treated me like an adult. And they talked to me like an adult. And there's still boundaries, of course, and that's really important. But the thing that they did that made a huge difference in my life was when they recognized that the school system was not necessarily perfect. Yeah. And needed an upgrade. And they stood by me through that process. And then I felt supported. And they even laughed at times at the school system. Like, oh, they told you that? Well, we all know that's not true. Yeah. They stood for me. Yeah. And how that helped me in my life was, it helped me find my own path again and empower others to do the same. So I'm not saying all schools are like this, because amongst these schools, these public schools or even these private schools, there are 1 in 10 teachers who are incredible gifts. And I still remember them today. And so there are people like you who might have stayed in the school system. Like, there's people like you who understand this, who maybe would have chosen to stay in a public school system, but you're that 1 in 50 teachers that, like, every student goes, that remembers your name. But then some of us need to leave those systems. Like, if I went back and was just a teacher in the school system, I'd be bumping up my head against the bricks. Definitely. But I can influence more people being outside the system. And I think you can too.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's what we're doing. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm
Yep.
creating. Yeah. And so do you remember one teacher that stands out for you, and why?
Miss O. Yeah, because she went to bat with, she was in my special ed kid class.
Yeah.
And she would go meet with me and the teachers and explain to them what I needed.
Mm.
And then she would sit with me and learn the way I needed to learn. So she would, instead of just memorizing, she would actually take me through little experiences and help me remember experientially, because I learned experientially.
Yeah.
And then she would spend extra time with me. And then she would also, when she would never make me wrong for not knowing. She would never call me stupid. She would never give me the disempowering toxic look of, which so many teachers do.
Yeah.
Which is actually their own toxicity.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily the teacher's fault either. It's because they're in a system where they want to make a difference, but they can't, because they're in a system that will shun them, will actually look upon them as like, the system will squash down sometimes teachers that really have a gift to bring their students. It's unfortunate. Yeah. So what do we do about it? We do exactly what you're doing, which is provide other resources.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And was bullying ever an issue in school for you, because you were part of the special ed group?
Not really for me.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't really. No, even though I wasn't like, I'm a pretty huge guy, but like, I wasn't really. No, I had good friends.
Great.
There were a few things that happened, but somehow there was always someone bigger than me looking after me. It just kind of worked. But I think there was bullying from the system to the students. So if you want to talk about bullying, the system itself bullied the students. And you want to talk about bullying, there were teachers who had internal issues with themselves and their own internal conflicts, and they were projected on the kids, especially the special ed kids, who were just a little different. Yeah. So teachers would bully with their comments. And then I did have one teacher, the summer school teacher, who was an absolute bully, who I'm so grateful for, because it really propelled me to go build the life I want, which was I had a best friend in high school, and she would actually go to him and go, "That Jeff guy is going to amount to nothing. Be careful with him." And and then he would tell me, and I go, "Oh, okay." And but I was, I don't remember her name because she's that important to me, but it's fascinating, like, how that would happen. But what it gave me was what a beautiful perspective on all the different, on how to take information and let it empower you versus let it disempower you. But it's because I had incredible parents who were a sanctuary at home. If I would have had a really rough home environment, I would have taken that as a truth. But actually all it did was make me rise harder.
Yes. And I think that's the most important distinction here, because what I see a lot of the time, Jeff, unfortunately, with these families is they get a diagnosis and then they're a part of this system, right? So we've got OTs, we've got speeches, we've got psychiatrists, we've got psychologists, and we've got the school. And this is just the immediate world this child's got to live in, with how many different perspectives all around them. And the parent gets lost in all of these perspectives. They get lost. And then they lose that direct connection and knowing of who their child truly is. And all they see then is what needs to change, because that's what all of these professionals are saying that needs to be changed. So I think that's a really important distinction to make, is that the key here was that you had two parents who saw any perceived weaknesses as actually your gifts and your strengths, and having that sanctuary at home was the crucial aspect of your world and what's been created for you now.
I watched my mother send up the people in many white coats, so-called, with diagnoses and teachers. So if there's anything to share with the parents where their kids getting diagnosed, is go back to the original time when you looked your child in the eye when the child was born, and you can see the infinite potential that child carries. And you can feel the gift of that child, the celebration of life. And you can see yourself in that child and how much you love that child. Everything you need is right there to share with that child, to love that child. And all those diagnoses are usually projections of a sick system, a psychopathic system projecting itself on your child. So what if your job was to protect that child's innocence and that gift to the world the way you would protect anything sacred, and protect it from the psychotic system that exists, that is being trying to project onto your child through often the most well-intentioned people, but a system that's sick, that's not preparing your child for the future at all, when in fact it's actually making your child into a robot, stifling their creativity. So if you want your child to have infinite possibilities, you must see that child as infinite itself, beyond the program. But the more you buy into that programming and those diagnoses, the more you build a golden cage around your child.
Yeah.
And the golden cage of disempowerment. So if you want, and if the child has enough of a strength within themselves over time, they'll reach inside their heart and they'll unlock themselves out of the cage. But most children stay in the cage. And as adults, our responsibility is to see the potential in our children, the next generations to come. And they will live into that potential. But our thoughts, how we see our children, how we see our next generation, are literally are so important. And the way we actually, if you want to build a more beautiful world and a more gentle world, then as parents, it's our responsibility to be gentle on ourselves.
Yeah.
And see ourselves as infinite potential. And when we do that, we grant that to our children. The work you do on yourself will have a direct impact on not just your children, but generations to come.
Completely. So Jeff, how did you harness your strengths? How have you harnessed them, do you think? What's been the biggest, there's many, right? You're living an extraordinary life that you are creating, but how do you harness your strengths? Such as, dyslexia and forget ADD, whatever, but how do you harness that?
How do I harness it? I admit to the areas that I don't have, that are my so-called, I don't see things as weaknesses. I'm a fish or a dolphin, right? Yeah. And I'm not here to climb trees. And if there's a tree to climb, I call somebody else. My one thing I'm very grateful for, my father started one of the largest outsourcing companies in the world. And he was a co-founder of that for outsourcing. So I got really good at outsourcing. One thing that's challenging for so-called really smart kids is they get really smart and they think they have to do everything in life.
Yeah.
Well, and in business and in life, that's not the way it works. It's about teams. So, I'm not the best at cooking, so I have people that help me cook sometimes. Yeah. I'm not the best at cleaning. I have a cleaner. I'm not the best at going over my books and my numbers, so I have a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
And so I have teams around me. But what I am good at is training and speaking, facilitation, and teaching sales and teaching business and helping businesses grow and all that stuff. Yeah. But that's the area that I like to do. Yeah. But I don't try and be good at everything. But the school system was really good at trying to make someone feel stupid for not being good at everything.
Yeah.
It's weird. I don't get it. That's not how the world works. It's preparing us it's preparing us to be robots, which is probably the design of it anyway.
Well, probably, right? Because it's more convenient. It's more convenient and it's less hassle.
Yeah, and nobody thinks for themselves, and then there's a lack of freedom and sovereignty, which is fascinating because it's almost a perfect system to make people slaves. I find it interesting. Who knows? Maybe that's the agenda, but that sounds weird.
Maybe. So yeah, I really like how you've explained that. That's perfect, actually. So I guess for you, Jeff, I think we've covered quite a bit, and I thank you for going into great detail of your childhood and your world. Is there anything that you feel like you haven't been able to share, or that you still feel is important to make crystal clear for parents, both parent and child, actually, if you could have a message for both?
Yeah, sure. So the incredible parents that are actually, I'll share with the incredible parents that are listening to this. The fact that you're listening to this says to me you're the kind of parent that cares. And your biggest strength is that you care. And that's your medicine for your child. And the way you demonstrate that caring is by learning and and letting the child teach you about all your blind spots and your lack of love within yourself. And as that child starts to share and reveal all the parts of you that you love the least, you have a responsibility to love the parts of yourself that you love the least, because what that does is it heals the trauma within your child.
Yeah.
Stop projecting your so-called challenges on your child, and go back to you. And when you can actually take full responsibility for all your challenges, your trauma, you'll do the work of, you'll literally support your child in healing and remembering who they are. The number one antidote is love. And the first area it starts with is you loving yourself as the parent. And as you begin to love yourself more, what will transpire will be a sanctuary for not only yourself, but your children. And you'll go back to really what family is about, which is a place of laughing, caring, and empowering each other. And then you go back to the original premise of what it is to be a human being. And when you're in that premise of what it is to be a human being, then all of your gifts will start to unfold in yourself, and your child's gifts will unfold. And what you'll witness and what you'll experience will be a life and a celebration that you've never experienced before. And everything that child was here to bring you into this world will be revealed to you. But you must let that child reveal it to you. It cannot be forced. It cannot be made. And it will not be understood. And it will disrupt things. But that's the job of the child in the next generation, to disrupt the current framework. Because right now, we need a disruption. And these children that are coming in at this time are the disruption. And your job is to protect them, look after them. And you'll do that by looking after yourself and seeing yourself as beautiful. And you'll then therefore be able to see your child's beauty. Okay, and the message to the children. Thank you for actually being a child or a parent or a teen or whatever you are watching this. And you're ahead of your time for simply being the type of person that would actually watch this. And someone ahead of your time like this watching this video says to me that you have big, incredible things to do here in this world. And you might not be understood now, but there will come a time when you'll be the most understood. But your first place to understand, first place to go to work is to understand that people right now may not understand you. And that's okay. This is your opportunity to build resilience and to build resilience in yourself. Don't worry about not being understood at this time. This is a time to develop resilience and courage, but not like courage, not like you're going to go out and save the world, but the courage to overcome your fears of rejection. And then as you so-called overcome those fears of being rejected by your peers and the people around you because you're so-called different, what'll happen is you'll develop the ability to stop rejecting yourself. The only person that can reject you is yourself. And so as you finally remember that you have a choice in either rejecting yourself or not rejecting yourself, and you are the final say, then you can finally choose to love yourself. And no longer reject yourself. This is the time when you stop saying disempowering things about yourself to other people. This is the time you stop saying disempowering things to yourself about yourself. And this is the time that you no longer pay attention to your so-called weaknesses. You nourish your strengths. And when you do that, you'll have teachers that won't see you, and that's okay. Right now, you're slightly protected because you're not seen by everyone. And when you can finally actually start to, then in time people will see you. But some of them aren't ready to see you because you scare them. And what scares them about you is that you represent the future. And the future sometimes is potentially so magnificent and so beautiful that they're not ready for it. So stay your path, kids.
Oh, thank you.
Something like that. Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, that'll do. That's okay.
Cool. That's why I did this. So thank you so much for being the type of person who cares about the next generation. They're so important.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And obviously, I'm happy to have you here because I know that that's so important to you too. And because I know you're a busy man. So I appreciate your time so much.
You're welcome.
And I value it. Thank you so much.
And people should work with you.
Thank you.
What you do. Like, it's about time. We just need, so yeah, people should work with you. So
thank you, Jeff.
All right. Okay. Take care.
Thank you so much. Okay, everybody, I'm going to put links in this below so you can get in touch with me, find out about the program that I offer, which will be working with your child and you directly in the home, and actually get those transformational changes that Jeff has been talking about, and have your child be the most empowering, thriving person that you desire and that you wish for since the day they were born. So I'll put those links below and contact me. It's time. Bye for now.